Bear cub was stuck in a burning tree hollow. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning sun filtered through the dense pine trees, casting dappled shadows across the wooden porch of the Harper family cabin. Little Noah Harper, just 11 months old, sat in his playpen near the open door, his chubby fingers reaching for the colorful blocks his mother had placed before him. The cabin stood alone in a clearing, surrounded by the ancient forest that whispered secrets with each gentle breeze. Lily Harper hummed softly as she prepared breakfast, occasionally glancing at her son who babbled happily in his own world of discovery. Noah's father, Marcus, had left at dawn to check his traps and wouldn't return until midday. The family had moved to this remote cabin just 3 months ago, seeking peace away from the bustling city life. Lily loved the serenity of the forest, though she sometimes worried about raising a child so far from civilization. The nearest neighbor was 5 miles away, and the small town of Pine Ridge was a 40-minute drive down a winding dirt road. Outside, the forest stirred with life. Birds called to one another, squirrels chattered as they leaped from branch to branch, and deeper in the woods, a mother bear named by local rangers as Willow foraged with her young cub, Bramble. The pair had been tracked by forest rangers who monitored the local wildlife population, their movements typically keeping them far from human settlements. But today, something was different. A sudden clap of thunder startled Noah, his blue eyes widening as he dropped his wooden block. Lily moved to the window, frowning at the clear sky. "Strange," she murmured, not realizing the sound came from a fallen tree struck by lightning during last night's storm. The dead pine had finally given way, crashing to the forest floor with a thunderous boom that echoed through the trees. The sound spooked Willow, who bolted in one direction while her cub, Bramble, ran in another, straight toward the Harper cabin. Lily returned to her cooking, unaware of the separation happening in the woods behind their home. Noah resumed his play, stacking blocks with determined concentration. His mother smiled, watching his tiny hands work with surprising dexterity for one so young. "You're getting so clever," she said softly, pride warming her heart. Minutes passed in peaceful domesticity until a strange sound caught Lily's attention, a soft whimpering coming from just beyond their yard. She hesitated, listening. It didn't sound like any of the usual forest creatures she'd grown accustomed to hearing. Probably just a fox, she told herself, turning back to the stove where pancake batter sizzled in the pan. Noah heard it too, his head tilted curiously toward the open door, eyes focused on something beyond his mother's view. The whimpering grew louder, more distressed. A small black nose poked through the tall grass at the forest's edge, followed by the round face of Bramble, the bear cub. Separated from his mother and frightened by the thunderous noise, the cub had wandered toward the only shelter he could find, the Harper cabin. Lily turned the burner off and moved to close the door, catching a glimpse of movement in the yard. Her heart froze as she spotted the bear cub. "Oh my God," she whispered, quickly scooping Noah from his playpen and backing away from the door. Where there was a cub, a mother bear would surely follow. And nothing was more dangerous than a mother bear protecting her young. But the mother bear didn't appear. Instead, the cub continued its pitiful crying, stumbling toward the cabin with uncertain steps. Lily watched in horror as it approached, torn between fear for her child's safety and sympathy for the obviously lost cub. She clutched Noah tighter as she reached for the phone to call for help, but the line was dead. The storm from the previous night had knocked out the service again. Noah squirmed in his mother's arms, pointing toward the door and making excited noises. "No, Noah," Lily said firmly, carrying him to the bedroom at the back of the cabin. She placed him in his crib and closed the door, hoping to keep him safely contained while she figured out what to do about the bear cub. When Lily returned to the main room, her blood ran cold. The bear cub had ventured onto the porch and was now sitting by the open door, trembling and making soft crying sounds. It was smaller than she expected, probably very young, its black fur still fluffy with youth. Its dark eyes were filled with fear as it looked into the cabin. Lily stood frozen, unsure what to do. The rangers had warned them about wildlife encounters when they first moved in, but nothing had prepared her for a bear cub practically knocking on her door. She backed away slowly, hoping the cub would lose interest and leave. Instead, a new sound drew everyone's attention, a crackling noise followed by the smell of smoke. Lily turned toward the window and gasped. The dead pine tree that had fallen was now smoldering, struck by lightning in the storm and finally catching fire in the dry summer heat. Sparks danced among the dry pine needles on the forest floor, and flames began to lick up the trunk of a nearby hollow tree, directly in the path between the cabin and the deeper woods. The cub whimpered louder, sensing the danger but too frightened to move. Lily's mind raced. Marcus wouldn't be back for hours. The phone was dead. The fire was small now, but in these dry conditions it could spread quickly. She needed to get Noah and herself to safety, but she couldn't just leave the cub to face the growing flames. As if sensing her thoughts, Noah began to cry from the bedroom, his distress echoing the cub's whimpers. Two babies, both frightened, both in danger. Lily took a deep breath and made her decision. "Hold on, Noah," she called, grabbing a large blanket from the couch. With careful movements, she approached the doorway where the cub huddled. The cub backed away slightly, its small body trembling. Lily could see its ribs through its fur. It was thin, possibly underfed. The mother bear must be young herself, perhaps inexperienced. "It's okay, little one," Lily whispered, her voice gentle as she slowly extended the blanket. The cub watched her with wary eyes, too frightened to run, too desperate for help to retreat completely. In the distance, the crackling fire grew louder. Smoke began to billow upward, forming a gray column that rose above the treetops. Time was running out. With a swift movement, Lily threw the blanket over the cub, wrapping it quickly before it could scratch or bite. The cub squirmed inside the makeshift bundle, but it was too weak and scared to put up much of a fight. Holding the bundle away from her body, Lily hurried back to the bedroom where Noah was standing in his crib, tears streaming down his chubby cheeks. "It's okay, baby," she soothed, somehow managing to pick him up with one arm while balancing the wriggling bundle with the other. The cub had gone surprisingly still, as if sensing it was being helped rather than harmed. Lily's mind raced as she considered her options. The cabin wasn't safe if the fire spread, but she couldn't outrun the flames with a baby and a bear cub. She needed to get to the car, to drive them all to safety, but the keys were in Marcus's pocket. He always took them, a habit from their city days that seemed ridiculous out here in the wilderness. A backup set hung on a hook by the back door, her only hope. Clutching Noah tightly to her chest and the bundled cub under her arm, Lily made her way through the cabin. The smoke outside was thickening. Through the kitchen window, she could see flames climbing the hollow tree, which was now fully engulfed. The fire had already jumped to a nearby pine, its dry needles catching like tinder. Just as she reached for the spare keys, a tremendous crack split the air. Lily turned to see the burning tree collapse, sending up a shower of sparks and flaming debris. One burning branch landed on the cabin's wooden porch with a thud, smoke immediately rising from the point of impact. Her escape route through the front door was now blocked by flames. No, 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 Lily muttered, her heart pounding as she fumbled with the back door. It hadn't been opened in months and stuck firmly in its frame. She set the cub bundle down, its occupant still eerily quiet, and shifted Noah to her hip. With her free hand, she pulled at the door with all her strength. It gave way suddenly, the unexpected momentum causing her to stumble backward. Noah wailed as she regained her balance, his tiny fingers digging into her shirt. "Shh, it's okay," she promised, though she wasn't sure if the words were for him or herself. She grabbed the bundled cub again and stepped outside. The air was thick with smoke, making her eyes water and her throat burn. The fire had spread faster than she'd anticipated, creating a semicircle of flames that curved around the front of the cabin. The only clear path led deeper into the forest behind the house, away from the road, away from help, but away from the immediate danger of the fire. Lily hesitated only a moment before heading into the trees. "Marcus will find us," she told Noah, who had buried his face against her neck, whimpering softly. "Daddy will come looking when he sees the smoke." The forest floor was covered with pine needles that crunched beneath her feet as she moved as quickly as she dared away from the cabin. The bundle in her arms had begun to squirm again, small whimpers coming from within the blanket. The cub was regaining its strength, which would soon become a problem. After several minutes of walking, Lily paused in a small clearing to catch her breath. The smoke was less dense here, but she could still see it curling through the trees behind them. The fire was spreading, following the trail of dry vegetation. They needed to find shelter, somewhere safe from both the flames and the wilderness. She carefully set the bundle down and loosened the blanket slightly. The cub's frightened face appeared, its dark eyes blinking in the sudden light. Instead of trying to escape, it simply stared up at her, too exhausted and confused to move. Noah, seeing the cub for the first time, let out a delighted squeal and pointed with one chubby finger. "Yes, that's a bear," Lily said, keeping her voice calm despite the panic fluttering in her chest. "But we don't touch. He's scared, just like you were." As if understanding her words, Noah's expression softened. He reached out a hand toward the cub, not to grab but in a gentle, offering gesture. Lily moved to stop him, but paused, watching in astonishment as the cub cautiously sniffed Noah's fingers. There was a moment of perfect stillness as the two babies regarded each other with innocent curiosity. The moment shattered at the sound of a low, rumbling growl. Lily's blood turned to ice as she looked up to see a large black bear standing at the edge of the clearing, its eyes fixed on them with unmistakable maternal fury. Willow had found her cub, and now Lily and Noah were standing between mother and baby. "Oh, God," Lily whispered, slowly rising to her feet with Noah clutched protectively to her chest. She took a careful step back, her foot crunching loudly on the forest floor. The sound made the mother bear huff, a warning that froze Lily in place. The bear cub, sensing its mother's presence, began to squirm more vigorously in the blanket. Lily wanted nothing more than to release it, to send it running back to its mother, but she feared any sudden movement would provoke an attack. She was trapped in an impossible situation, holding a baby bear while facing its angry mother, with a forest fire closing in behind them. Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, a searing pain shot through her ankle. Lily looked down to see a snake slithering away through the undergrowth, a copperhead, one of the venomous species Marcus had warned her about when they first moved to the cabin. The fire must have driven it from its hiding place right into their path. The pain was immediate and intense, spreading up her leg like liquid fire. Lily gasped, struggling to remain standing as her vision swam. Noah sensed her distress and began to cry, his wails echoing through the clearing. The mother bear took another step forward, her massive paws leaving deep impressions in the soft ground. Lily knew she had seconds before her leg gave out completely. With one last desperate effort, she placed Noah gently on the ground and unwrapped the bear cub, pushing it toward its mother. "Go," she whispered to the cub, pain making her voice tight. "Go to your mama." The cub hesitated, looking back at Noah with what almost seemed like reluctance before scampering toward its mother. Willow sniffed her baby thoroughly, checking for injuries, her eyes never leaving Lily and Noah. The venom was working quickly through Lily's system, making her dizzy and nauseous. She sank to her knees beside Noah, placing herself between her son and the bears, though she doubted she could do much to protect him in her weakening state. To her surprise, Willow made no move to attack. Instead, after ensuring her cub was unharmed, she turned and began to lumber away. The cub followed, then paused, looking back at Noah once more before disappearing into the underbrush behind its mother. The relief was short-lived. Lily could hear the fire crackling closer, smell the thickening smoke. She needed to keep moving, to find help or at least safer ground. But the snake's venom was making it increasingly difficult to think clearly. Her ankle had swollen to twice its normal size, and the pain was becoming unbearable. "Marcus," she called weakly, though she knew her husband was too far away to hear. "Someone, please help us." As if in answer to her plea, a rustle in the bushes drew her attention. Lily tensed, fearing the mother bear had returned or another predator had been driven their way by the fire. Instead, a man emerged from between the trees, his weathered face registering shock at the scene before him. "Help," Lily managed, the word barely audible as darkness crept into the edges of her vision. "Snake, fire." The stranger moved swiftly, taking in the situation with experienced eyes. "I'm Caleb," he said, kneeling beside her to examine her ankle. Forest Ranger saw the smoke and came to investigate. His hands moved efficiently as he spoke, producing a small kit from his backpack. "Copperhead bite. Not usually fatal, but we need to get you treatment." Noah whimpered, reaching for his mother. Caleb glanced at the child, then back at Lily's rapidly paling face. "Can you walk?" Lily tried to stand but collapsed back to the ground, the world spinning around her. "No," she gasped. "Take Noah, get him safe." Caleb's expression was grim as he surveyed their surroundings. The smoke was thicker now, the fire's roar growing louder. "Can't leave you here," he said firmly. "Fire's moving too fast." He made a quick decision, lifting Noah with one arm and helping Lily to her feet with the other. "Lean on me. There's a river not far from here. If we can reach it, we'll be safe from the fire." Lily nodded weakly, leaning heavily against the ranger as they began to move through the forest. Each step sent waves of agony through her leg, but the thought of Noah kept her moving forward. The little boy had gone quiet, his blue eyes wide as he clung to Caleb's shirt. They had gone perhaps 50 yards when Lily's strength gave out completely. Her leg buckled beneath her, and she fell to the ground with a cry of pain. Caleb stopped, his expression torn as he looked between her and the approaching fire. "Go," Lily urged, pushing herself up against a tree trunk. "Take Noah to the river. I'll rest and follow." "Ma'am, with that bite—" "Please," she interrupted, her eyes filling with tears as she looked at her son. "Save my baby." Caleb hesitated, then nodded grimly. "I'll come back for you," he promised, adjusting his hold on Noah. "Keep this." He handed her a small radio from his belt. "If you can't walk, use this. Channel 3. My partner will hear you." Lily clutched the radio with trembling fingers as Caleb turned and jogged away, Noah looking back over his shoulder at her with confused, frightened eyes. "It's okay," she called after them, forcing strength into her voice. "Mommy will be right behind you." As their figures disappeared among the trees, Lily let her head fall back against the rough bark. The venom was making it hard to think, hard to stay conscious. The fire was coming closer. She could feel its heat now, see the orange glow spreading between the trees. She fumbled with the radio, pressing buttons with numb fingers, but couldn't be sure she'd reach the right channel. "Help," she croaked into the device. "Forest fire, snake bite. Caleb has my son." Static answered her, broken occasionally by unintelligible fragments of voices. Lily closed her eyes, fighting against the darkness that threatened to envelop her. She thought of Noah, his tiny face looking back at her as Caleb carried him away. Would he remember her if she didn't make it? Would he know how much she loved him? The crackle of breaking branches snapped her eyes open. The fire had reached the clearing they'd just left, consuming everything in its path with hungry orange flames. Smoke billowed toward her, making her cough violently. With the last of her strength, Lily pushed herself to her feet, crying out as her injured leg took her weight. One step, another. Each movement was agony, but she forced herself forward, following the path Caleb had taken. Noah needed her. She would not give up. The smoke grew thicker, stinging her eyes and burning her lungs. Lily pulled her shirt up over her nose and mouth, trying to filter the air, but it did little good. Her vision blurred, trees and undergrowth merging into a hazy green wall. She stumbled, caught herself against a trunk, pushed on. A new sound cut through the roar of the fire. Water. The river was close. Hope gave her a final surge of energy as she limped toward the sound. Through the trees, she caught glimpses of sunlight reflecting off moving water. Just a little farther. Her foot caught on a root, sending her sprawling to the ground. The impact knocked what little breath remained from her lungs. As she lay, gasping on the forest floor, the radio slipped from her grasp, sliding down a small incline out of reach. Lily tried to crawl toward it, but her limbs refused to cooperate. The venom, the smoke, the exertion, it was too much. Darkness crowded the edges of her vision, spreading inward like spilled ink. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was a large shape moving toward her through the smoke. A bear, standing on its hind legs, silhouetted against the flames. When Lily regained consciousness, the world around her seemed impossibly quiet. Gone was the roar of the fire, the crackle of burning wood, the choke of smoke. Instead, she heard the gentle rushing of water and the soft chirping of birds. Her eyes fluttered open to blue sky visible through a canopy of green leaves. She was lying on soft grass, her injured leg elevated on what felt like a folded jacket. "She's awake," a voice said, familiar, but not Caleb's. Lily turned her head to see a woman in a forest ranger uniform kneeling beside her, checking the makeshift bandage wrapped around her ankle. "Welcome back, Mrs. Harper. I'm Ranger Elena Diaz. You've had quite an ordeal." "Noah," Lily croaked, her throat raw from smoke and thirst. "My son." "He's fine," Elena assured her, offering a canteen of water. "Caleb got him to safety. He's with your husband now." Relief flooded through Lily, momentarily overwhelming even the throbbing pain in her leg. "Marcus is here? How?" "He saw the smoke from his trapping route and came running," Elena explained, helping Lily sit up slightly. "Met up with Caleb and your son at the river crossing. They're just over there." She pointed to where Marcus sat on a fallen log, cradling Noah, who appeared to be sleeping peacefully against his chest. Seeing them, Lily felt tears spring to her eyes. "The fire? Under control. We've got 3 crews working it, and the river helped create a natural fire break. Your cabin is safe. Some damage to the porch, but Nothing that can't be fixed. Elena checked Lily's pulse as she spoke. The antivenom is working. How's the pain? Only then did Lily notice the IV line running into her arm, connected to a small bag hanging from a nearby branch. Better, she said, surprised to realize it was true. The searing agony had dulled to a persistent throb. How did I get here? I remember falling. The fire was so close. Elena looked uncomfortable for a moment. That's complicated. According to Caleb, when he came back for you with Mr. Harper, you weren't where he left you. We found you here, by the river, about 100 yards downstream from where we set up the rescue post. Lily frowned, trying to make sense of this. I don't remember walking here. You didn't, a gruff voice interjected. Lily turned to see Caleb approaching, his uniform smudged with soot, his expression troubled. At least not alone. What do you mean? Caleb exchanged a glance with Elena before answering. When we backtracked to find you, we saw something unusual. Bear tracks heading away from the fire, and beside them drag marks, like something had been pulled through the undergrowth. A bear, Lily whispered, the memory of the silhouette in the smoke suddenly vivid. But why would... It was her, Marcus said, having approached with Noah still sleeping in his arms. He knelt beside Lily, leaning down so she could touch their son's soft cheek. The mother bear, the one whose cub you saved. That's impossible, Lily said, though even as the words left her mouth she wasn't sure. She remembered the way the bear had looked at her in the clearing, the intelligence in those dark eyes, the decision to leave rather than attack. Animals don't, she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. I've been a ranger in these woods for 15 years, Caleb said quietly. Seen things that defy explanation. Black bears are smarter than most people give them credit for. And mothers. He smiled slightly. Well, mothers have their own kind of wisdom, don't they? Noah stirred in Marcus's arms, his blue eyes opening sleepily. When he saw Lily, his face lit up with a beaming smile. Mama, he said clearly, his first word, spoken as if he'd been saving it for just this moment. Lily reached for him, ignoring the pull of the IV in her arm. Marcus carefully transferred Noah to her embrace, and she held him close, breathing in his sweet baby scent beneath the lingering smell of smoke. Yes, baby, she whispered against his soft hair. Mama's here. As she cuddled her son, a movement at the edge of the clearing caught Lily's attention. There, half hidden in the shadows between two pine trees, stood Willow, the mother bear. Beside her the cub, Bramble, watched with curious eyes. For a long moment the two mothers regarded each other across the space, one human, one animal, both having risked everything to protect their young. Then, with a soft huff that might almost have been a farewell, Willow turned and ambled back into the forest, her cub following close behind. "Did you see that?" Lily asked, her voice hushed with wonder. Marcus followed her gaze to the now empty space between the trees. "See what, honey?" Lily smiled, hugging Noah closer as her eyes tracked the bear's retreat until they disappeared completely among the trees. "Nothing," she said softly. "Just a mother taking her baby home." 3 days later, Lily sat on the newly repaired porch of their cabin, her bandaged leg propped on a stool. The forest around them was scarred but healing, patches of blackened earth gradually being reclaimed by new growth. The fire had been contained before it could do widespread damage, though the hollow tree where it had started was now just a charred stump. Marcus emerged from the cabin, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to Lily before settling into the chair beside her. "Noah's finally down for his nap," he said. took 3 stories and 2 songs. Lily smiled, cradling the warm mug in her hands. He's been extra clingy since, well, everything. Can't blame him, Marcus said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. It was traumatic, for all of us. He paused, his expression growing serious. I've been thinking, Lily. Maybe this isn't the right place for us after all. We could move back to the city, somewhere safer. Somewhere with neighbors and cell service and hospitals nearby. Lily gazed out at the forest, considering. The events of the past few days had been terrifying, yes, but they had also shown her something extraordinary, a connection to the natural world she'd never dreamed possible. No, she said finally. This is our home now, Noah's too. We just need to be better prepared. Marcus studied her face. You sure? After everything that happened? Because of everything that happened, Lily corrected. She pointed to a small patch of wild blueberries they'd planted near the tree line. Look. There, carefully helping itself to the ripe berries, was Bramble. The bear cub had grown noticeably in just a few days, its coat glossier, its movements more confident. As they watched, Willow emerged from the trees to join her cub, her massive body dwarfing her offspring as she sniffed the air cautiously. They've been coming every morning, Lily said softly. I think they've adopted us, in their own way. Lily, Marcus said, tension evident in his voice. They're wild animals. We can't. I know, she interrupted gently. I'm not suggesting we try to tame them or feed them by hand or anything silly like that. But I think they're watching over us, the way we watched over Bramble. Marcus looked skeptical, but before he could respond, Noah's voice came through the baby monitor on the porch table. Not crying, just babbling happily in the way he did when waking from a good nap. Lily started to rise, wincing as she put weight on her injured leg. I'll get him, Marcus said, standing quickly. No, it's okay, I could use the practice with these. Lily gestured to the crutches leaning against the porch railing. Just give me a hand up. As Marcus helped Lily to her feet, a sharp cry from the direction of the blueberry patch made them both turn. Bramble had wandered closer to the cabin, nose twitching curiously, while Willow huffed anxiously from the edge of the clearing. The cub seemed drawn to the sound of Noah's voice coming through the monitor, its head tilted in a listening posture that was almost human in its intensity. Go on home now, Lily called softly to the cub. Your mama's waiting. We'll see you tomorrow. As if understanding her words, Bramble gave the cabin one last long look before scampering back to Willow. The mother bear nudged her cub gently, guiding it back toward the deeper forest, but not before turning to gaze directly at Lily with those intelligent dark eyes. In that moment, Lily felt a profound connection. Mother to mother, survivor to survivor. There was wisdom in those ancient eyes, a recognition that transcended species. They had saved each other's children, and in doing so had formed a bond that defied explanation. What are the chances, Marcus murmured, watching the bears retreat, that a snake, a fire, and a bear would all be part of the same story, and everyone survives? Lily smiled, leaning on her crutches as she prepared to go inside to their son. That's the thing about motherhood, she said. It makes impossible things happen every day. The next morning, Lily sat at the kitchen table with Noah in his high chair, feeding him small bites of scrambled egg. Her laptop was open beside her, a half-written email to her parents visible on the screen. How did one explain the events of the past week? The words seemed inadequate to capture the terror, the wonder, the profound shift in how she saw the world around her. Marcus entered through the back door, his expression troubled. Ranger Caleb just called on the radio, he said. "There are poachers in the area. They've been tracking the bear population, setting illegal traps." Lily felt her heart sink. Willow and Bramble? He didn't say specifically, but Marcus shrugged, the gesture conveying his concern. "They've set up trail cameras to try to catch these guys, but in the meantime, we should be extra careful when we're outside." Noah banged his spoon on the high-chair tray, oblivious to the tension in his parents' voices. Lily absently wiped egg from his chin as her mind raced. The thought of Bramble caught in a trap, of Willow shot by poachers. It was unbearable. After everything that had happened, the bears felt like extensions of their family in some strange, primal way. "What can we do?" she asked. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Not much, I'm afraid. Caleb asked us to report any suspicious activity, but otherwise to stay clear. These poachers can be dangerous. They're after bear gallbladders for the black market. Worth a small fortune in some places." "That's horrible," Lily said, pushing away from the table. Her leg was healing well. She could walk short distances without the crutches now, though the doctor in town had warned her to take it easy for at least another week. With renewed determination, Lily pulled on her side of the trap, while Willow pressed down on the spring mechanism. The metal jaws began to separate, inch by agonizing inch. Bramble cried out as the pressure on its paw eased, but remained trapped. "Just a little more?" Lily encouraged, her arms trembling with effort. Willow seemed to understand, pressing harder on the spring. With a sudden release of tension, the trap sprung open. Bramble pulled its injured paw free and scrambled toward its mother, leaving a trail of blood on the forest floor. Lily sat back, breathing hard from the exertion. Willow immediately began licking her cub's wound, cleaning it with maternal thoroughness. The injury looked painful but not fatal. If infection could be prevented, Bramble would likely recover. "He needs antibiotics," Lily said, more to herself than to the bears, "and something for the pain." As if in response to her words, Willow stopped her ministrations and fixed Lily with that intelligent gaze once more. There was something in those eyes, gratitude, perhaps, or understanding. A connection that transcended the barriers between their species. The moment was shattered by a sharp crack in the distance, a gunshot. Willow's head jerked up, her entire body tensing. Bramble cowered against her, whimpering softly. "Poachers," Lily whispered, fear tightening her throat. "You need to go. Hide." As if understanding, Willow nudged her cub, urging it to move. But Bramble stumbled, its injured paw unable to bear weight. The cub cried out in pain, collapsing back to the ground. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Voices carried through the trees, rough male voices calling to each other. The poachers were heading their way. Lily made a split-second decision. "Come with me," she said, reaching for her crutches and pulling herself to her feet. "Our cabin isn't far." Willow watched her warily, protective instinct warring with the need to find safety for her injured cub. Lily took a tentative step backward, gesturing for the bears to follow. "Please," she whispered, "I can help." The mother bear looked between her cub and Lily, then made her decision. With gentle teeth, she lifted Bramble by the scruff of his neck, the way she would have carried him as a tiny newborn. The cub hung limply in her grasp, too weak from blood loss and pain to struggle. Lily moved as quickly as her injured leg would allow, leading the bears on a roundabout path back to the cabin. She avoided the direct route, fearful of leaving an obvious trail for the poachers to follow. The forest was eerily quiet now, even the birds silent as if sensing the danger that stalked through their world. When they reached the edge of the clearing where the cabin stood, Lily paused, scanning the area to ensure it was safe. Marcus was on the porch, pacing anxiously, the radio in his hand. Noah was nowhere to be seen, safely inside, Lily hoped. "Marcus," she called softly, stepping into the open. He turned, relief flooding his features at the sight of her, only to freeze when Willow emerged from the trees behind her. "Lily," he said, his voice carefully controlled. "Don't move." "It's okay," she assured him, continuing toward the cabin. "They need our help. The cub is hurt, caught in a trap, and there are poachers coming." Marcus stared in disbelief as his wife calmly led a full-grown black bear and her cub across their yard. "Have you lost your mind?" he hissed, backing toward the door. "That's a wild animal, Lily." "She saved my life in the fire," Lily replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. "And now her baby needs our help. There's no time to explain. The poachers are close." Something in her voice must have convinced him, because Marcus simply nodded, holding the door open wider. "Where's Noah?" Lily asked as she reached the porch steps. "Napping in his crib," Marcus replied, his eyes never leaving Willow. "What exactly is your plan here?" Lily glanced back at the mother bear, who had stopped at the bottom of the steps, still carrying her injured cub. "The old storage cellar," she decided. "It's cool down there, and they'll be hidden from the poachers." Marcus looked like he wanted to object, but instead nodded grimly. "I'll get the first aid kit and call Caleb." Lily turned to Willow, gesturing toward the side of the cabin. "This way," she said, hoping against hope that the bear would continue to trust her. To her relief, Willow followed, padding silently around the cabin to where a pair of angled doors lay against the ground, the entrance to the old root cellar that had been built beneath the cabin long before they purchased it. Marcus joined them, first aid kit in hand, as Lily struggled to pull the heavy doors open. He helped her, revealing a set of sturdy wooden steps descending into cool darkness. "I'll get a lantern," he said, hurrying back to the cabin. Lily turned to Willow. "Down there," she said, pointing into the cellar. "You'll be safe." The mother bear hesitated, sniffing cautiously at the dark opening. Bramble whimpered in her grasp, the sound tugging at Lily's heart. "Please," she whispered. "I promise we'll help him." After what seemed an eternity, Willow made her choice. With careful steps, she descended into the cellar, still carrying her cub. Lily followed, her crutches awkward on the narrow steps. The cellar was larger than it appeared from outside, extending beneath much of the cabin. Stone walls kept it cool, and shelves lined one side, still holding jars of preserves left by the previous owners. Marcus appeared at the top of the steps, a battery-powered lantern casting long shadows as he climbed down to join them. "I called Caleb," he said quietly. "He and Elena are on their way, said to keep the bears contained if possible, and that they'll handle the poachers." He set the lantern on a barrel, illuminating the space more fully. "He also said we're insane." Lily managed a small smile. "He's probably right." She turned her attention to Bramble, whom Willow had gently placed on a pile of old burlap sacks in the corner. "Let me see him." The mother bear stood protectively over her cub, eyeing the humans with renewed wariness. Lily approached slowly, hands visible, speaking in a soft, constant murmur. "It's okay. We're going to help him. I promise we won't hurt him." Whether it was her tone or some deeper understanding, Willow eventually stepped back, allowing Lily to kneel beside the injured cub. Bramble's paw was a mess, the flesh torn where the trap had bitten deep. Blood matted the fur, some fresh, some already drying in dark clumps. "We need to clean it first," Lily said, looking up at Marcus. "There's a jug of water in the kit, right?" He nodded, placing the first aid kit beside her and opening it. The radio at his belt crackled to life. "Marcus? Lily? It's Caleb. We're about 10 minutes out. What's your situation?" Marcus unclipped the radio. "We're in the root cellar under the cabin with the bears. The cub is injured, caught in a trap. Lily's treating it." A long pause followed. "You're treating a wild bear in your cellar." Caleb's voice eventually came back, disbelief evident even through the static. "Just keep the doors closed. We've spotted 2 men heading your way. Armed. Stay put and stay quiet until we get there." "Understood," Marcus replied, returning the radio to his belt. He lowered his voice to a whisper. "Poachers are coming this way. We need to keep quiet." Lily nodded, focusing on her task. With gentle hands, she cleaned the wound on Bramble's paw, murmuring soothingly as the cub whimpered and tried to pull away. Willow watched intently, occasionally making soft huffing sounds that seemed to calm her baby. "I'm not sure what else to do," Lily admitted after she'd cleaned away the blood and applied an antiseptic ointment from the kit. "It needs stitches, maybe surgery. We're just buying time until Caleb gets here." Marcus had been keeping watch at the top of the cellar's steps. The doors cracked just enough for him to peer out. "Lily," he hissed suddenly. "They're here." Lily froze, her hand still on Bramble's injured paw. "The poachers?" "2 men, coming across the clearing. They're heading straight for the cabin." Heavy footsteps sounded overhead as the poachers reached the porch. The floorboards creaked as they moved across them. Willow tensed, a low growl building in her throat. Lily placed a restraining hand on the bear's flank. "Shh," she whispered. "They'll hear you." Voices filtered down through the floor, gruff, impatient. "You sure the bear came this way?" Tracking device on the trap showed it here. Signals strong. Lily and Marcus exchanged horrified glances. The trap had a tracker. They would be able to follow Bramble's exact location, right to the cellar. "There's blood here on the porch." Lily looked down, noticing for the first time the small red droplets staining her clothes and hands. Bramble's blood, transferred when she'd treated his wound. She must have left a trail all the way from the forest to the cabin. Somebody lives here, could be trouble. Nobody's home, doors unlocked, places empty. Lily's heart raced. Noah was still inside, napping in his crib. If the poachers found him... "Marcus," she whispered urgently. "Noah." His face paled. "Stay here," he breathed, pulling himself up the steps. "No," Lily hissed, grabbing for his ankle but missing. "Marcus, they're armed." But he was already pushing the cellar doors open, slipping through the gap and letting them pull closed behind him. Lily stood frozen at the bottom of the steps, torn between following her husband and staying with the bears. If she went after him, the cellar doors would reveal their hiding place. If she stayed put, Marcus would face the poachers alone. Footsteps overhead again, moving toward the back of the cabin where Noah's room was located. Then a new voice. Marcus's, deliberately loud and casual. "Can I help you, gentlemen? This is private property." "Sorry, mister. Didn't know anyone was home. Door was open. Looking for something in particular?" A pause. "Hunting. I saw signs of a bear and her cub. You seen 'em?" "Bears are protected in this forest. Hunting season doesn't start for months." Another pause, longer this time, the silence heavy with threat. "We got permits, special permits." "I'd like to see those if you don't mind. I'm friends with the local rangers." A shuffling sound, then a thud. Something or someone being shoved against a wall. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. Noah began to cry, his wails cutting through the tense silence. "That your kid?" The voice was harder now, menacing. "Be a shame if something happened to him. Why don't you tell us where the bears went and we'll be on our way?" Lily's blood turned to ice. These men were threatening her baby. Without conscious thought, she began to climb the steps, fear for her family overriding all else. Behind her, Willow huffed softly, nudging Bramble deeper into the corner of the cellar. Just as Lily reached the top step, the cellar doors were wrenched open from above. Bright sunlight flooded in, momentarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she found herself staring up at a weathered face beneath a dirty cap. One of the poachers, a rifle slung over his shoulder, a tracking device beeping steadily in his hand. "Well, well," he said, his thin lips stretching into an unpleasant smile. "What do we have here?" Before Lily could respond, a massive, dark shape burst past her, charging up the steps with a roar that shook the very air. Willow, her maternal protective instinct finally overtaking her fear, launched herself at the poacher. The man screamed, scrambling backward, fumbling for his rifle. Willow was on him in seconds, her enormous weight pinning him to the ground, teeth bared inches from his throat. Chaos erupted. The second poacher appeared, gun raised. Marcus tackled him from behind, the two men crashing into the porch railing. The gun discharged with a deafening crack, the bullet splintering wood somewhere above Lily's head. Noah's cries grew more frantic. Lily pulled herself out of the cellar, adrenaline masking the pain in her healing leg. The scene before her was pandemonium. Willow still had the first poacher pinned, the man's face gray with terror as he lay perfectly still beneath the bear's massive paws. Marcus was wrestling with the second man, both grappling for control of the rifle between them. Time seemed to slow as Lily saw the second poacher's finger tighten on the trigger again. The gun was pointed directly at Willow. Without thinking, Lily threw herself forward, crashing into both men. The gun discharged again as they all tumbled to the ground, the sound deafening at such close range. Pain exploded in Lily's shoulder, hot and sharp. She heard Marcus cry out her name, felt warm wetness spreading across her shirt. The world tilted, sounds becoming muffled as shock set in. Through dimming vision, she saw Willow turn toward the sound of the shot, saw the bear's dark eyes widen with what looked impossibly like concern. Then the forest erupted with new sounds, shouts, the crackle of radios, running footsteps. Ranger uniforms flashed between the trees as Caleb and his team arrived, weapons drawn. The poacher beneath Willow surrendered immediately, hands raised as far as they could go, with a bear still sitting on his chest. The second man, seeing himself outnumbered, released the rifle and raised his hands as well. As the Rangers secured the poachers, Marcus knelt beside Lily, his face white with fear. "Lily, stay with me, honey. Help is here." She tried to smile, to tell him she was fine, but the words wouldn't come. The pain was receding now, replaced by a cold numbness that was somehow worse. She heard Caleb shouting for a medic, felt gentle hands examining her shoulder. "It's a clean shot through," someone was saying. "Missed the major arteries. She's lucky." Lucky. The word echoed strangely in Lily's mind as darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. The last thing she saw before consciousness fled was Willow's face, the bear's massive head lowered close to hers, those intelligent eyes watching her with what could only be described as concern. When Lily woke, she was lying in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors nearby. Her shoulder was heavily bandaged, an IV dripping clear fluid into her arm. Marcus sat beside her, Noah sleeping against his chest. When he saw her eyes open, relief washed over his tired face. "Hey there," he said softly, reaching out to take her hand. "You scared me." Lily's throat felt dry, her voice raspy when she finally managed to speak. "The bears?" A shadow crossed Marcus's face. Caleb and Elena took them. Willow is fine, but Bramble, his paw was bad, Lily. They had to take him to a wildlife rehabilitation center. He squeezed her hand. They think he'll recover, but he may not be able to return to the wild. The damage was too severe. Tears filled Lily's eyes. After everything they'd been through, the thought of Bramble confined to a facility for the rest of his life seemed unbearably cruel. And Willow? They had to tranquilize her to separate them. She's been released back into the forest, away from the areas the poachers were working. Caleb says they caught the whole organization, 6 men in total, with traps set throughout the forest. They were running an illegal trade in bear parts, selling them overseas. Lily closed her eyes, trying to process everything. "How long have I been here?" "3 days," Marcus replied, gently stroking her hair back from her forehead. "The bullet went straight through your shoulder. Clean wound, minimal damage. The doctors say you'll make a full recovery." "And Noah?" Marcus looked down at their sleeping son. "He's fine, confused by all the excitement, but unhurt." He hesitated, then added softly, "He keeps asking for Bear. I think he misses them." Despite the pain and exhaustion, Lily felt a smile tug at her lips. He's not the only one. 2 weeks later, Lily stood on the porch of their cabin, her arm in a sling, watching as a Forest Service truck pulled into their clearing. Caleb stepped out, followed by Elena, both in their ranger uniforms. Between them, in a large transport cage, was Bramble. The bear cub looked healthier than when Lily had last seen him, his fur glossy, his eyes alert. His injured paw was wrapped in a professional bandage, a slight limp visible as he moved around the cage. "Hey there, city folks," Caleb called, his weathered face breaking into a grin. "Brought someone to see you." Lily moved carefully down the porch steps, Marcus and Noah right behind her. "I thought he was going to a rehab facility," she said, unable to hide the hope in her voice. Elena smiled. "That was the plan. But he's healing better than expected, and there's been a development." She gestured toward the trees behind the cabin. She wouldn't leave. Lily turned to see Willow standing at the edge of the clearing, her dark eyes fixed on the cage containing her cub. The mother bear made no move to approach, but neither did she retreat into the forest. "She's been hanging around your property since we released her," Caleb explained. "We were worried at first, thought she might be a danger to you folks, but she never comes close to the cabin unless you're inside. It's like she's keeping watch. The wildlife vet thinks Bramble can make it in the wild with his mother's help, even with the limp," Elena added. "It's unusual, but given the circumstances, we thought we'd give it a try. If it doesn't work out, we can always move him to the facility later." Lily nodded, tears prickling her eyes. "What do you need us to do?" "Just stand back," Caleb said, moving to the cage door. "We'll open this up and let nature take its course." The family retreated to the porch, Noah watching wide-eyed from his father's arms. Caleb unlatched the cage, swinging the door open before backing away quickly. For a long moment, nothing happened. Bramble remained inside, sniffing cautiously at the opening. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, the cub limped out, his good paws scrabbling on the ground as he sniffed the air. His head swiveled, taking in his surroundings, until his gaze landed on his mother at the edge of the trees. With a joyful cry that sounded almost like a human child's, Bramble bounded toward Willow, his injury seemingly forgotten in his excitement. The reunion was beautiful to watch. Willow nuzzled her cub thoroughly, checking him over as any mother would after a separation. Bramble pressed against her, making small sounds of contentment. Then, together, they began to move back toward the deeper forest. At the tree line, Willow paused. She turned, looking directly at the humans on the porch. For a moment, her eyes met Lily's, and in that gaze was a depth of understanding that transcended species. Then, with a soft huff, she led her cub into the forest, both bears disappearing among the trees. "Well," Caleb said after a long silence, "that's something you don't see every day." Elena was shaking her head in wonder. "In 15 years as a ranger, I've never seen anything like it. Bears aren't supposed to connect with humans that way." "Maybe these aren't ordinary bears," Marcus suggested, his arm around Lily's waist. "Or maybe we're not ordinary humans." Lily leaned against him, watching the spot where the bears had vanished. "Maybe we're all just mothers and fathers, trying to protect our babies." She looked down at Noah, who was still staring at the forest with fascination. "And maybe that's enough to bridge even the wildest differences." As summer turned to fall, the Harper family settled back into a routine. Lily's shoulder healed, though it still ached when rain was coming. Marcus had installed a security system, triggered by motion sensors placed strategically around their property, not to keep wildlife out, but to warn them if poachers ever returned. Noah grew more active and curious, speaking new words every day. Bear still among his favorites. They saw Willow and Bramble occasionally, usually at dawn or dusk, moving through the edge of the clearing. The bears never approached the cabin directly, but seemed to patrol the perimeter, as if checking that all was well. Sometimes they would stop at the blueberry patch, Bramble's limp less pronounced now, but still visible as he helped himself to the sweet fruit. One crisp October morning, Lily was hanging laundry on the line while Noah played in a pile of fallen leaves nearby. Marcus had gone into town for supplies, leaving them alone for a few hours. The forest was peaceful, painted in the brilliant reds and golds of autumn, the air crisp and clean in her lungs. A strange sound caught her attention, a low, rhythmic whine that seemed to be coming from the north, beyond the ridge that bordered their property. It grew louder, then became identifiable. An engine, laboring up the steep terrain on the other side of the ridge. Lily frowned. There was no road there, no reason for vehicles to be in that area of the forest. Noah looked up from his leaves, his head tilted in curiosity at the sound. Lily moved to his side, suddenly uneasy. "Let's go inside, sweetheart," she said, scooping him into her arms. "Mama needs to call Ranger Caleb." Before she could reach the porch, a flicker of movement at the forest's edge caught her eye. Willow emerged from the trees, moving with unusual urgency. The bear stopped at the edge of the clearing, standing tall on her hind legs, nose testing the air. Behind her, Bramble appeared, staying close to his mother's side. The engine sounds grew louder, then multiplied, more than one vehicle approaching from the ridge. Willow dropped to all fours, giving a soft huff that sent Bramble scurrying back into the protection of the forest. But instead of following her cub, the mother bear moved further into the clearing, directly toward Lily and Noah. Instinctively, Lily backed toward the cabin, clutching Noah tightly. Willow had never approached them so boldly before. Was something wrong? Had the bear finally reverted to her wild nature, seeing them as threats or prey? But Willow stopped several yards away, making a strange, urgent sound unlike anything Lily had heard from her before. The bear turned to look back toward the ridge, then at Lily and Noah, then back again. The message was suddenly, startlingly clear. Danger is coming. Hide. Without questioning further, Lily ran for the cabin. Inside, she locked the door and moved swiftly to the window, peering out while keeping Noah held tightly against her. Willow remained in the yard for a moment longer, watchful, then turned and loped back into the forest, disappearing among the trees. Seconds later, the first ATV crested the ridge, a rugged vehicle carrying 2 men in camouflage clothing. It was followed by a second, then a third, all heading directly for the cabin. None bore Forest Service markings or any official insignia.